wrestler. We met a wrestler in the flesh.
Ooh, yeah. So, I'm really lucky, Chris, that like yourself, I've been able to meet a lot of wrestlers. The first of which being at the age of 12 when I met Rikishi. So it means that when it comes around to being my turn for doing this segment, I'm always spoiled for choice, and I will be for the foreseeable future until I run out. And hopefully, by the time I've run out of stories, I'll have new stories to tell because the world will be back to normal, and maybe I'll have met some new wrestlers by that point. But I'm going to tell a story about the second time I ever met a wrestler. So this is about 2 years after Rikishi, and I'm telling the story because I was listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce and Conrad, and they did a special on ECW One Night Stand 2005, and I realised that podcast came out on the 15-year anniversary of that show. And that was on Sunday, June 12th. And it was a few days later on Thursday, June 16th, 2005, I think, when the WWE were in town. They were in Glasgow, the SmackDown brand specifically. And it was that day that I met a guy called John Cena.
John Cena.
And so if you've got your wrestling historian hat on, you'll know that in June 2005, Cena was in his first reign as WWE champion. And the way this all came about was I'm 29 now. So in 2005, I was 14. And my dad one weekend was reading his newspaper and he goes, oh, here. And he had this cutting from a newspaper. He cut out his paper, this advert to say that John Cena would be doing an appearance at HMV in Argyle Street, Glasgow, on the 16th of June, 2005. And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. And then I looked at the calendar and I realized that's a Thursday. I'm in school that day.
Oh, man.
I know, right? And, it's a bit kind of weird for me to tell the story now as a teacher, but oh my God, I begged and I pleaded for permission to not be in school that day, to be conveniently sick so that I could go at the age of 14 and meet John Cena.
I've done that plenty of times as well.
Oh, I know you have. It's like, so I feel like I need to state now, I do not condone at all. No, I seriously, I do not condone
obviously
skipping school for stuff like this. I did it when I was 14. I shouldn't have done it, but I did, and this is the story. You learn from your mistakes, right, Chris?
Absolutely.
And sometimes you meet the WWE champion from your mistakes.
Yeah, let's make that clear. This isn't a mistake, right? It was a misjudgmental decision back in the day.
Uh-huh. So you had to go and pick up, they only would do this sometimes at autograph signings. You had to go and pick up a wee ticket for it, but it was free. Right. But it was just, that was your way in. And so I got 2 little stubs to meet Cena from HMV, I think maybe a few days before. And I remember, for whatever reason, Robert didn't want to come with me. Maybe he didn't want to skip school. I think that was probably why. But
because he was sensible.
Exactly. But I had no one to go with. And I actually, on the 16th of June 2005, when I got off the train, it was actually quite a wet day, as I recall, in Glasgow. I got to Argyle Street, and they'd set up basically some like a pole kind of scaffolding structure outside HMV so we could queue on the street as opposed to queuing in the store.
Right.
And I had the spare ticket, so I think I gave it away to somebody, because I had mine to meet John Cena. And this was all in promotion of his CD, You Can't See Me.
Really?
With that trademark, whatever the guy's name was. And say what you want, last week we had a wee giggle about WWE Originals, didn't we? But
yeah.
John Cena's album is pretty good. Okay?
I think Bad Man is really good, the one he performed on Raw. But do you remember the music video? What was it called?
The A-Team.
My Time or something?
Oh, do you mean the one where it's like a kind of a soft song, emotional?
Yeah, and they showed the music video on Raw.
Because there's My Time Is Now. Okay,
it's not My Time.
But I know the one.
Hang on, I'm going to search it.
Is it Right Now you're talking about?
Right now, that's it. Not My Time. That one right there.
I love this song so much.
It's so emotional.
I really love it. I'm going to download that again. Come on then. Woo! Yeah, okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing.
It's
Was that the same singer from Mark Henry's theme?
It might have been. But I hope so. But honestly, it was like the how many years anniversary, 15-year anniversary or something of that music video being on Raw, like recently. And it was on Instagram, and I watched it, and I got really emotional. It was so nostalgic, that sort of wee tune at the start, and then because Cena was the man at the time, like he was the main guy. Like when you were a kid, like nothing was cooler than Cena. So that music video and just that weird sound and like the kind of high pitched voice and stuff like that. And the music video where he's like got the cars and he's like shining the cars and he's like putting his brothers in the walls of Jericho and stuff. It was so nostalgic. That's such a good song.
Brilliant. I bought the CD that day because that was the thing. You had to buy the CD and that would get you the ticket, but you didn't need to get the CD signed. So I missed an opportunity to get that CD signed. I've still got the disc, but I never got the CD signed. Instead, I brought a copy of SmackDown magazine, of which he was on the cover on.
I always think that must be quite random for the people who are signing though. Like if, for example, so that's obviously an obvious one, like getting the Cena CD signed, right? And you had to buy that for the ticket. But sometimes when it's just the latest DVD that's out, like I wondered if the wrestler who's doing the signing is like, why are all these people got the same DVD getting signed? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like when I met Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase, you had to buy TLC 2009 because it just came out.
Yeah, and, that's right.
Like everybody had to get, everyone was getting that signed, and like they're not even on the show, but they're like, why is everybody asking me to sign this?
It's like when I met Carlito and Primo, it was Royal Rumble in 2009. They're not even on the cover of the disc, and that's a Royal Rumble cover where there's loads of wrestlers, but they're not even on it.
Couldn't even make the cover.
So yeah, so I queued up, and a reminder: I am 14 at this stage. I'm not very confident socially. I'm shy, and like my social life is pretty much hanging out with Robert and a couple of other friends. Like I don't, I'm not one of the cool kids. Put it that way. And believe it or not, Chris. So I queued up, and I didn't know that ECW had a revival until that day when I overheard a couple of like adults in the queue talking about One Night Stand, which had been the previous Sunday.
That's right, you said that, yeah.
And I just looked up the set list, the set of the card from that show that night, which I think was at the SECC as opposed to Brayhead Arena. I might be wrong with that. It might have been Brayhead Arena, but it was one of the two. And the main event was like Cena, Kurt Angle, and JBL with special guest enforcer. Wait for it, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What?
Yeah, Austin was on that show in 2005, mere days after he tore the place down, like causing havoc at One Night Stand.
In Glasgow?
In Glasgow, yeah. I had no idea that he was on that show.
Oh my God, why wasn't that at that show?
I know, well, 2005, like I was 14, my dad would never have allowed like forked out money to take me to a show like that.
God.
So it's like because after Rebellion 2001, there I've mentioned it again, I didn't go to like a big WWE show until 2007, by which point I was 16 and had saved up money for the ticket. So it was weird looking at that card. I had no idea at the time that like Austin was in town. So that was it's mental, isn't it? So like, if anyone's listening to this who was at that show, please get in touch and tell us about it, because I wasn't at it, Chris wasn't at it, and I met Cena that day, but like I don't think anybody was buzzing about Cena above a certain age that night. They were probably buzzing about Austin. So so it was cool. And I think we must have queued for about an hour, and I was quite far ahead in the queue. I was one of the first to meet him. And I just remember they started blaring out his CD in the shop, and we could hear it from outside. And there were a couple of wee boys knocking about who didn't have tickets to see him. And by this point, I'd already given away my spare. So I felt quite bad because I would love to have given it to a kid, but I think I gave it to another adult. Or, well, I was a teenager, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was just a bunch of wee boys who kept running in and out of the store just to look at him, which was really funny because there was not much security about. So yeah, I met him, and that way, like it still happens now as an adult, like you're in the queue to meet somebody and you're thinking about what you might say to them or how you might talk to them. And it's so much easier for me now that I'm a bit more confident and I'm a grown man. But back then, I was terrified in the queue. The closer I got to him, and then when I first got a glimpse of him, I thought, oh my god, this man is massive. And the closer I got to John Cena, like the more terrified I got of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And comparatively speaking, I did really well with Rikishi, but this I bombed. So finally I got to John Cena, and there was none of this like hand whatever you want sign to somebody. Like you went right up to him, right in front of him, in front of the desk that he was sat at, and I was terrified. And so I walked up to him. Somebody like said, "Okay, off you go. You can go see him." And I walked up to him, and he looked at me, and I went, "John Cena." That's all I could say. I just went, John Cena. And he looked at me, and in that minute, in that second, I could tell that he felt really sorry for me. Like he felt really, and this is the
Oh,
thing, like John Cena, this nobody come at me and say that John Cena is a bad wrestler or a bad guy. This guy gave like thousands of dollars to Shad Gaspard's family. He just donated $1 million to Black Lives Matter. Like
how crazy is that, man?
John Cena is a good guy. Like he is a guy who is aware of his position, his privilege, and his platform, and he does good.
One of the
And
good
he's
guys.
like we were saying about Batista earlier. Like he's a guy who's got a bright career ahead of him in terms of his acting. And in that isolated moment, he saw this anxious teen who could barely get 2 words out, and he was really sympathetic. And in response, he gave me this really sympathetic look, and he just extended his hand. And you know that way you were talking about your handshake with Tatanka, like that kind of manly kind of hand
Yeah.
clapping thing. He did that to me, and that I think that was his way of telling me that it's okay. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So he grabbed my hand, and then he enclosed it in his other hand, and I'm just thinking, this guy's hands are huge. He's got such big hands, and I've got these wee like 14-year-old boy hands. You know what
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And so he just looked at me for a second and nodded, and then he let me go and signed my magazine, and that was it. Like, and it was the least verbal wrestler interaction I've ever had, really. But it's one of the most meaningful for me because I was so scared, and it was apart from me going, John Cena. We didn't say anything. We said he said nothing to me at all the whole time. But he
Wow.
grabbed me, and he grabbed my hands, and he gave me that look, nodded at me, and then signed my magazine. And I feel like that was just him saying, "It's fine, don't worry, chill, it's fine. I'm
Oh, that's
just a
great.
guy." So like, I just won't hear it. If anyone tries to tell me that John Cena is a bad wrestler or a bad guy, I'm sorry, I have no time for you. I've got what most people don't have. I've met the man, and he was really good to me, and I felt really vulnerable at that moment, and he was just such a good guy. So I'll put it up on the Instagram at some point after this pod goes out. John, you're Chris.
Oh my god, I wish it was John Cena.
I'll put the magazine because I've still got the cover of that
I was going to
Smack the
say,
magazine.
do you have a picture with you and Cena?
No, I don't. I did take a picture of him when I was in the queue, and it was on an
Oh,
old
right,
phone,
right,
and I
right.
lost it years ago. But they weren't allowing selfies or anything like that.
Right,
You weren't
okay.
allowed to do it. It was one of those.
Just when you said
But
it's going to be on Instagram, I thought, oh my god, you got a picture, but okay, the autograph's cool.
dude, if I had a picture of Cena, I would have shown you in
No, I
November
know.
2012 when I first met you.
Hi, I'm Greg. Look at this picture.
Dude, I would have had it printed on a T-shirt or something. But yeah, so like it might on paper, like if you were to script it out, look like not much. By the way, because I've had much more bizarre wrestling interactions. You know, talking to Eric Bischoff about beer, or Paul Heyman about the weather, or watching Paul Heyman berate my friend Robert for being clumsy. There's lots of stories that I've yet to tell on this podcast. But this one's always a really sentimental one for me because
That's
I don't
great.
know, you reflect on your teenage years, and I see it a lot as a teacher now, and I'm surrounded by teenagers. You sympathize for that. You become more self-aware, you become a bit more socially anxious. And for some of us, it takes years to kind of break out of that. And I just feel like in that one moment, he saw it and did his best to dispel it without even saying a thing.
Would
And
you
that's why I'm a
say?
Johnson fan.
Would you say this is a life-defining moment for you? So, and for two ways. One, because you would go on and meet all these other wrestlers. So it was the first time that you were like, you were standing in the queue, you saw the wrestler you're about to meet, and you got all nervous, right? That's
Yeah.
way number one. And then way number two would be like the way that you're able to talk to wrestlers now. You know what I mean? You're more comfortable with it now because obviously not as comfortable as you would become, but like this is probably a good example of like John showing you that like there's just guys and girls, they're just normal people, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was definitely quite formative. A lot of stuff that happens to you in your teenage years is, and I've never thought about it along those lines before, but now you frame it that way, and it does make sense. The next wrestler I would meet after that would be, I think, Jeff Hardy, and like that was a much better interaction in terms of my confidence. So, like,
You still get nervous though when you see them because
yo,
it's
oh
like it's
yeah,
still that aura, you know?
I was nervous. The last big wrestling personalities I met were Conrad and JR, and I was still
Yeah,
nervous when
I'll always
Conrad
be
was trying to
nervous.
flog
Yeah.
his blue chew to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But it's not just wrestlers though, like see just other celebrities. Like so for example, say I've done a play in a theatre, right? And
yeah,
oh no. I've been to see a play, right? Here's a better example. I've been to see a play, and a lot of the times at these sort of smaller theatres, the actors will come out after and see their family and take pictures of people and that sort of thing. Even that, well, this is like a peer, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
I could have been doing the exact same job, getting paid the exact same amount of money, but having to go up and say, "Oh, I really enjoyed the show" and stuff, that still makes me kind of anxious, you know. Just I don't know if
yeah.
it's not because of the wrestling, but just because you're going to kind of make an impression on someone, you know.
It does, yeah. And I've had like subsequent traumatic episodes with this. It was waiting outside a theatre, which caused me to be attacked by Morgan Freeman's bodyguard because I said hello to him. And that's maybe
Right?
another story for another time.
What? Yes,
Um,
you have to tell us that story.
One day, yeah. The Morgan Freeman. I've met Morgan Freeman. It was quick and it was painful, literally. um, so, but yeah, yeah, I would say it did. I think it did a lot for me, especially because I was out of school that day, and I wasn't like when you're a teenager, like you're worried about the judgment of your peers. But I didn't know anyone there. The only person I knew was John Cena because I'd seen him on telly.
Yeah,
So, like, I wasn't worried about being seen to be anxious. I was quite openly anxious. And I think when you have a platform to feel safely anxious, that's healthier than bottling it up, which is what you kind of do at that age, and we
yeah.
still do as adults. It's better just to try and be a bit more open about it, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to try and be a mental health coach to anyone listening to this, but for me, certainly that was
No, no.
a big helpful thing. You know what I mean?
But it's like real life experiences that everyone can relate to. Like everyone's been nervous talking to someone they admire, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always see the day after I would do a signing or something, and I would go to school the next day. I would always feel really cool, like I was out of school and everyone thought I was at the dentist, and everyone thought I was in the doctor's, you know. But I just met Jeff Hardy or whoever, you know.
Yeah, it's you do get a buzz afterwards. I remember actually having to the rule was that after that signing, I would go to my dad's work, get his car keys, and then go wait in his car for an hour or so. And I just remember sitting in the car playing the John Cena CD, just mesmerized by the signature. And had a wee buzz after,
Yeah,
after going through that, and that's it. When you go for something which is riddled with anxiety, you get a bit of an adrenaline boost when it's all said and done. And it's funny because like John Cena's signature has changed over the years, so this doesn't look like the kind of Cena signature you would buy at a live event for the
right.
mid kind of 2010s. It's a little bit different, and I'll put it on the Instagram and people can see it. Like, but this was like 2005 era John Cena signature. I also just distinctly remember the kid in front of me getting "Here Comes the Pain" signed, which is Brock Lesnar.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that was a
Yeah.
weird one. But
What
you
the
know
game
what?
or the DVD?
The game,
Oh
the game.
God,
Yeah. So, but that was Cena's video game debut, so it makes
that's
sense.
true. Yeah,
At
yeah,
least on PlayStation, at least.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a big deal for me, and I still fondly remember it. And usually when I'm as a teacher, you always get to a point when you've known your pupils for a while that you can start to be a bit more open with them, and I love that. I cherish that. And like, you want to have a positive relationship with your pupils where you don't just need to be this cold teacher, you can actually just be a person to them.
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
but that takes time to build that relationship, so I'm not going to feel that straight away in my new school, but I know it'll come eventually. But that's one thing I enjoyed about my last place that I worked in, was that I was at a point where I could say, skipping school is bad. I went for a terrible experience the one time I did it, so don't do it. I could share this story about John Cena, and it wasn't
That's
a terrible
great.
experience, as we're saying, but do you know what I mean? It's like, it's nice to retell that story and do so in a way that's hopefully productive for the people around me.
Totally. I
That,
guess
that was it, really.
great. It's a great story. I guess a similarity for me in terms of like that sort of being all nervous and then that really helping the experience actually helping you going forward was maybe my Piper experience that I talked about before.
Yeah, yeah, lovely
Like
story.
you're just like you're seeing just this legend in front of you that everybody who is meeting before you is having this amazing experience with. So now you
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
feel pressure, you don't want to have a bad experience with him. So when I went up to him and stuff, and he was so nice, and I talked about this a few episodes ago, and he's like talking to my dad, get my dad involved, and wanting to take a picture with me and embrace it, asking me questions and things like that. It just makes such a difference, and it puts you at ease a little bit because they kind of reassure you. So like Cena with that look to you and that sort of thing kind of makes you go, all right, well, it's just John. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's beautiful, good stuff.
it really
We
is.
love these stories here.
I love it, and I also just appreciate how John Cena, squeezed my hand, even though it must have been very sweaty at the
Really? Yeah.
time. So yeah, that's it. Can I make a request, Chris, that as we bring the podcast to a close, can
Yeah.
we get played out to Right Now by John Cena and That Trademark as our outro theme for this week? Is that doable?
We can. Well, the only issue with it, with playing actual songs, is that I don't want to get flagged for copyright. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't know who owns the songs. Like, actually, so the other week when we played Mark Henry's theme song,
Yeah.
I actually got flagged on YouTube.
Did it?
Someone has copyrighted the song "Start Rocking." But
Well,
I didn't
maybe
get, I
we
didn't
can
get
avoid
anything
it.
on iTunes. I didn't get anything on Spotify or anything. So maybe I could maybe do it on Spotify.
Well, listen, maybe we should just encourage people to go and listen to the song, and we can play our usual intro.
I'll see. I'll look into it and see how it can be done.
Okay.